Hello YouTube. Bane666 here. Welcome to Propaganda of Toxic Feminism, the series in which I expose and debunk falsehoods, misconceptions, and outright lies spread about the men's rights movement. So let's get stuck into it. Okay folks, let's start with the crazy Libfem. Many of you already know her. It's sael Palani, also known as Diana Boston, also known as Joy and Tora, also known as Mancheeze, and she has probably gone under a few other names as well. Anyway, this article is from her Mancheeze blog. It's titled, MRA View of Equality, Beating Up Women. Oh boy, this is going to be interesting. It reads, MRAs are overjoyed because Florida State football player De'Andre Johnson knocked a woman out at a bar. She threw the weakest punch at him that grazed his face and he knocked her out. MRAs think a bigger, stronger male knocking out a woman who obviously can't throw a punch to save her life is equality. Okay, so there are a couple of claims here. The first is that she threw a weak punch that grazed his face. The second is that he knocked her out. She states this twice. The third claim is that MRAs are overjoyed at this, presumably because we like seeing women hit. Well, let's check out the first two claims by looking at the actual footage. And we'll deal with the third as we work through the article. Okay, so let's zoom in and have a closer look, step by step. There seems to be a bit of pushing to get to the bar, but I think anyone who has ever been to a crowded bar would know, this is fairly normal. At this point she turns around and raises her fist, as if about to strike him. It's important to note that she has initiated the threat of violence. He then grabs her arm to stop her from hitting him. I would think this is a pretty normal response. Then it looks like she attempts to either kick, or knee him, possibly in the groin. It's impossible to tell if she connects or not. At this point he's forced back after her kick, so I think it's reasonable to assume the kick connected. And then she punches him. It's impossible to tell how hard the punch was, or how it connected. But even if Mancheeze was right, and the punch just grazed him, it still shows an escalation of violence. And if he didn't react, it's safe to assume she would have continued to kick or punch him. It's also important to note that up to this point, all he has done is to try to stop her from using violence against him. This changed after she threw this punch, which makes me think that maybe it not only connected, but was much harder than Mancheeze would have us believe. And he then responds by hitting her back. And as you can see, she isn't knocked out as Mancheeze reported. Now Mancheeze did get one thing right. De'Andre Johnson is bigger and stronger. But does this mean he shouldn't be able to defend himself? How many times does he have to be hit before he's able to strike back? 5? 10? 50? I suspect Mancheeze would argue that he's never able to strike back if his attacker is a woman. Bigger and stronger is not an excuse. If I went up to a guy who is 6'5" and solid muscle, and I started to hit and kick him, should he not be able to defend himself? I suspect he would. And I suspect I would have a very good, but painful, life lesson. And next time I'd think twice about laying my hands on someone else and initiating violence. But Mancheeze does a fantastic job at blame shifting. Let's look at that first paragraph again. She starts by claiming that De'Andre Johnson knocked a woman out at a bar. So she starts by exaggerating the actions of Johnson. Chances are, most of her readers haven't seen the footage. So this enables her to magnify Johnson's actions. She next says she threw the weakest punch at him that grazed his face. Now she diminishes the actions of the woman. She ignores that the woman starts with a threat of violence. She ignores the kick. And then diminishes the punch to weak, and something that only grazed his face. But this isn't anything new for sael Palani. Just have a look at how she describes domestic violence between males and females from a video she made a couple of years ago.
And of course they put forth bogus interpretations of research as well. One of the most common ones is the domestic violence studies, where a lot of MRAs will say that the domestic violence between men and women is equal, whereby it's not. There are a lot of fine-tuned elements in the research that go to show that not only is intimate partner violence something that women are far more likely to get seriously hurt than men, but they break it down by whether or not there is domestic violence going on between the man and the woman, right? And in those cases, the woman is violent, but she's more likely to be hurt. And in situations where it's not both men and women, when it's only one-sided, it's usually women that get hurt. And then there's another study that they like to quote where, again, they try to make this equal comparison that men and women are both doing it to each other at the same rate, and in the same severity, which is not true, because the researcher went and coded things like throwing a tissue, throwing a hairbrush is the same as knocking somebody's teeth out. So you can see the problem with that, right? I mean, it will, you look at a real situation, okay, a girl throws a tissue box across the room. It doesn't hit him. And that's usually typical of a domestic violence situation, is a woman will throw something, but she'll throw it away from him. She won't hit him with it. And if she does, it's usually something that doesn't cause any damage. And then he'll go off and haul her in the face and break a couple of teeth.
Oh, I see. So when a woman is violent towards a man, she just throws a tissue box at him. But when he is violent towards her, he knocks her teeth out.
A new campaign is being launched today to raise awareness about male victims of domestic abuse. Tom Parmenter has been hearing one man's story.
In the mirror, Ian McNichol looks back at a man who was once broken, physically, mentally, and almost totally.
She was incredibly violent. I'll give you 3 or 4 examples. She placed lit cigarettes up my nostrils and forced me to go to sleep with those cigarettes still in my nose. She held my eyes open while she sprayed bleach into them. She assaulted me with a steam iron. She placed it on my left lower arm, on my upper right shoulder and in the middle of my shoulder blades. She boiled a kettle and poured it over my groin, and then whilst I was stuck to a leather sofa writhing in agony, she reboiled that kettle and re-poured it over my groin. And I'd got to the point where I was so mentally ground down, I lost almost 25% of my body weight. I have 2 permanent indentations in my left shoulder where I was attacked with a hammer with such ferocity that the handle of the hammer actually broke.
His former partner is now serving 18 years in prison.
Her justification was that I didn't tell her often enough that I loved her, and I didn't instigate the physical side of the relationship. That was her justification for the violence, that I'd made her feel unattractive.
Ian is now slowly moving on with rebuilding his body and his life. He believes a tip-off to the police from an anonymous neighbour genuinely saved his life. A lot of people will just not quite understand how it can happen, how you can't stand up to that kind of abuse?
Sure. Well, of course, as a victim, for me it's a gender-neutral crime. What actually happens is that your feelings, I loved my partner, those feelings get abused. It's wrong for a man to hit a woman. Violence of any description is wrong, so it wouldn't have solved it. I can't say why she committed the level of violence that she did, but the fact is for men that the other additional difficulties that they may not be believed if they come forward, so there's a challenge there. But all victims should find the strength to confide in someone, because help is out there. I know that from my own experience and proof of that.
And as with any form of domestic abuse, deciding to find that help is often the hardest step. Tom Parmenter, Sky News.
And here are some more examples of just throwing a tissue.
It happened in an instant. Rubbing alcohol, a lighter, and absolute terror.
It was just extreme heat and flames, and it seemed like the whole house was on fire.
The house was not on fire, but Melvin McDaniel was. His arms, chest, and hands engulfed in flames. He battled to tear off his burning clothes.
I finally ripped them off, and I was standing in the kitchen naked. I could see my skin on parts of my shirt on the floor. I could see it smoldering.
See it and smell it. The putrid odor of burning human flesh.
The smell was awful.
And the aftermath was too. McDaniel spent more than a month in the hospital and suffered through 8 operations. He still carries around the scars, and it is a heavy burden. A daily reminder of the woman McDaniel says intentionally set him on fire, burning away his flesh, his ego, and his peace of mind. That woman was his girlfriend.
Was she trying to kill you?
I think so.
And if he's right, she would certainly not be the first. Each year in this country, 600 men are killed by their wives, girlfriends, or exes. You hear the statistics for female victims of domestic violence.
We know that every 15 seconds a woman is battered.
But how often is a man battered by a woman in the United States? Well, the number is the same, every 15 seconds. At least according to Richard Gellis. Gellis is considered one of the country's leading experts on domestic violence. He has made a career of talking to victims and perpetrators, and what he's discovered is that
the women are as likely to initiate the violence as the men.
And it might surprise you to know that Gellis says 1/4 of all domestic violence cases involve men who don't hit back. That's what the numbers say. In this room in Sacramento, California, you'll find the people who back them up.
Somebody was going to die in my house. I was ready to fight to the death over who didn't change the toilet paper roll.
These 3 women have all been locked up for violent behavior, usually against a husband or boyfriend. The women have also done time in an anger management class run by Claudia Diaz.
Do you think people would be surprised how many women come here?
Amazed. I think they would be surprised how many women engage in physical violence.
The Sacramento program is one of just a handful of anger management programs in the U.S. targeted toward women who abuse their male partners.
You think that can't nothing happen to you. I mean, you just can go through life and do it and hit and slap and punch. And
I thought it was really cool to be a tough guy.
Yeah, oh, yeah. Defend yourself.
So if there are men who are victims of domestic violence, it seems that there would be shelters to house those men. But we searched the whole country and found just one domestic violence shelter that accepts men. We found it here in the middle of the California desert. We can't show you the outside of the shelter because we want to protect the men, women, and children who stay here. We can show you the inside, places where those children can finally play without fear. Rick Stratton participates in the shelter's outreach program. His wife did time for 6 felonies, including stalking, abuse, and causing grave bodily harm. He says she broke his ribs, his jaw, and his confidence, and when doctors treated his injuries, he lied.
I'm getting 3 or 4 stitches in my jaw, and I'm telling them that I fell down and hit a TV.
Stratton says he knew a 180-pound tattooed guy would be laughed at if he asked for help.
There's 100,000 male victims in our society who, when they present themselves as victims, the best they can hope for is that they'll be taken seriously, but more often than not, they'll be laughed at or ridiculed. What do you mean? You let your wife hit you? Why would you let your wife hit you? Hit her back.
But Stratton swears he never did. He says he learned as a child over a game of Monopoly never to hit his sister, a lesson handed down by his father.
He told me one time, he said, you do that again and you'll pay for it. You don't hit girls.
A very different lesson from the one many little girls learned.
I was taught if any man ever says anything to me that's inappropriate, I get to slap him.
I can't think of anything bad enough. And Hollywood teaches that lesson too.
The latitude that women get is more substantial. They have a greater free fire zone.
Some say even our nation's lawmakers have looked the other way. Back in 1994, Congress passed the Violence Against Women Act, or VAWA. It's $1.6 billion tax dollars.
It's done a lot of very concrete things that will actually increase the physical safety of not just women, but all people who use those services.
People we talked with all agree that VAWA has done good things for women, but most say it has done little or nothing for men. One Justice Department official told us flat out, quote, the program is designed to assist women. And take a look at this Justice Department document obtained by Fox 5. It acknowledges that for the purposes of VAWA, the department refers to, quote, victims as women and perpetrators as men. Critics say that's un-American.
Clearly it's unconstitutional.
Congressman John Conyers sponsored the Violence Against Women Act.
I worry about constitutional issues, and this is not one of them.
National Organization for Women Executive Vice President Kim Gandy is one of VAWA's strongest advocates. She says the bill does not discriminate.
Most all of the provisions are quite gender neutral.
But if the language of the bill is gender neutral, why not make the name gender neutral?
What's in a name?
Maryland Congresswoman Connie Morella says that there is something in a name. She says the Violence Against Women Act is called that because more often than not, women are the victims of what used to be called a dirty little secret.
That secret really affected women far more than men. And women were contained within their little shell as a hostage.
She's right. Women are more likely to be victims. Morella admits they are perpetrators too. In fact, Richard Gellis says there are 2 million women in the U.S. who hit their male partners. Take out those who are emotionally provoked and those who hit in self-defense, and he says you're still left with 100,000 women who beat their male partners. Author Phil Cook says hardly anybody's talking about that.
There is, I believe, a deliberate effort to give out misinformation about domestic violence for political reasons.
Cook penned the only book ever written that focuses strictly on male victims of domestic violence. He's been speaking out, so has Barbara Ladine. Ladine works for a group called the Independent Women's Forum. She's a regular critic of some of VAWA's biggest supporters.
I think the average taxpayer would be appalled. Also because the average taxpayer has been beaten around the heads by the media and by the government to understand that this is a female problem done by males.
Lobbyists for men's organizations say the American taxpayer has bought into those negative stereotypes of men.
They stay after work, they have sex with their secretaries, they go to the bar with their buddies, they get drunk, they go out and have sex with the waitress, and then they come home, beat the wives, and have sex with the children.
Back in the 1970s, as America fought a war in Vietnam, another battle, the one between couples, came into the spotlight here at home. Back then, people thought only men could be abusers. Claudia Diaz says that got women the help they needed.
And it was a great paradigm. It worked, it was effective, and it's not realistic.
Now, she and some others agree it's time for VAWA's supporters to make a change.
They like the spotlight to be on the women. The spotlight has been on the women for 20 years, and I have no problem with that in one sense because I want women to get help. But I think it's time to turn on the stage lights and see who else is on stage.
Researcher Richard Gellis says he's even had his life threatened by people who disagree with his conclusion that men are victims too.
How many death threats have you gotten?
10, 12.
Rick Stratton says that sort of active effort to hide information is dangerous.
I can't be an isolated incident. I can't be. And I know that there's something that's got to be done about it because the longer we stay quiet and we cover and we lie, the worse it's going to get. And we're going to be using body bags.
Counselors say not dealing with both sides of domestic violence means in the long run, kids suffer.
In the final analysis, it doesn't matter whether dad's hitting mom or mom's hitting dad, the children are watching and they're learning the wrong lesson.
The children learn to use violence in their homes, and they pick people who know that dance, and the violence just keeps going on and on and on.
On and on as children grow up and live in the shadow of their parents' mistakes.
It must be all that toxic femininity, where society teaches women to be violent, right? Oh no, of course not. I'm sure violent women are somehow the fault of toxic masculinity. After all, everything else is, right? And you see, this is one of my main problems with gender feminism. It starts out with the assumption that males are violent, aggressive, and always to blame. And that females are victims, pure, and never to blame. So what happens when gender feminists are confronted with female perpetrators and male victims? After all, this scenario doesn't fit their gender stereotype narrative. Well, sael Palani has given us the perfect example. The female perpetrator is excused, and blame is somehow shifted to either the male victim, another male, or the patriarchy. Or the female act is diminished, while the male act is exaggerated. Look guys, I've never hit a woman, and just like those guys you saw in the clips, the idea of hitting a woman is repulsive to me. And I hope I'm never in a situation where it's something I have to do in self-defense. I think a lot of males have been brought up to think this way. But there is not a chance I'd let anyone pour boiling water on my groin, or hit me with a hammer. And I hope I don't come off as judgmental concerning those guys. I do understand that they had been broken down over time, both physically and emotionally, to the point where they couldn't fight back. But from my point of view, my repulsion at hitting a woman stops with my own safety. And this should be the case for everyone regardless of gender. I'm not a violent person by nature. I think it's the first resort of the weak-minded, but everyone has the right to defend themselves. Even football players like De'Andre Johnson. Now if sael Palani, or Mancheeze, or whatever name she is using this week, wants to then twist that into, MRAs are overjoyed, she can go fuck herself. Violence is wrong, self-defense is not. But we should get back to her article, as she might actually give us some examples of who these overjoyed MRAs are. These MRAs are so happy they're making 15-minute videos whereby they loop the 15 seconds of him hitting her as they remark on how great it is. This video is very disturbing as the MRA gets a rage boner every time he loops the tape. You've been warned. Okay, so let's take a look at the video she links to.
My. How the times have changed. Let's watch this video. Keep a look at the bottom middle of the screen here. Wait for it. Wait for it. She punches him once. BAM! Right in her fucking face, man. Jesus, if that's not a taste of gender equality, I don't know what is. Well, here we have a situation where a quarterback for a college football team, after supposedly this woman called him various, or at least a racial slur, I believe she called him nigger. Then, in the middle of their pushing scuffle, before he ever hit her, she kicked him in the groin, and then punched him once, and then finally he retaliated with a pop right to the face. The reason I say my, how times have changed is take a look at the comments section under this video. It is a victory for, really a victory for gender equality. If gender equality means that men and women are equal, and you should be treated as such, and you don't get special exemptions just because you're a woman, i.e. if you punch a guy in the face, expect retaliation. I'm right there with Whoopi Goldberg and the true feminists who believe in true gender equality. But take a look at this comment section. First, the top comment, 600 upvotes. Bullshit. She hit him first after threatening him with a raised fist. He acted in self-defense and she got what she deserved. I would have done the same thing. It's called equality. BAM! Bam!
Yeah, the thing is, he's not an MRA. Once again we see something said by an individual who is not an MRA, attributed to numerous MRAs. Just like with Nolan last episode, and the Mad Max debacle some months back. But I shouldn't be surprised that sael palani is calling red pill philosophy an MRE. After all, she thinks laughing which is an MRE. But I wonder, are there any other YouTubers supporting Johnson's right to defend himself?
All right, so there are no reports of her getting arrested or being charged with anything. The city attorney is saying that he's facing possible prosecution because of that video. The 19-year-old quarterback was booted off the team and also charged with battery after the Tallahassee Democrat, a publication, obtained the video showing Johnson punching a woman in the face at a bar following an altercation. The woman raised her fist and shouted racial epithets at Johnson when the player accidentally made contact when he was walking up to the bar. That's according to his lawyer. His lawyer also says that Johnson tried to de-escalate the situation, but the woman kneed him in the groin area, which you can kind of see in the video, and took another swing before he retaliated.
We don't automatically believe his lawyer. Okay.
Right.
So obviously he's going to say whatever is in his client's best interest. At this point, he's been kicked off the team. He's arrested. So his lawyer is going to step in here and give his side of the events. Could it be true? Of course, it could be true. My viewing of that tape, super inconclusive. Right. So first of all, he seems to be making some contact with her in the beginning. Is that enough for her to, get ready to punch him? No. Look, people bump into each other all the time at a bar. Like, it drives me crazy when people are like, what'd you bump into me for? I don't know, because there's a million people in here, and we're all bumping into one another because it's an incredibly crowded bar. That's how life works, right? So was she wrong in balling up her fist, seeming to kick him in the groin? Yeah, and I don't know why she's not facing any charges for that, but there might be a literal reasons that we don't know. Maybe she thought he was grabbing her, right? And so then would you charge her? Probably not, right? But we don't know, so the jury's out on that, so let's see what happens in that situation. Now, should either one of them have gotten physical? Should she have tried to punch him and kick him? Of course not. Should he have grabbed her from the beginning? Well, it depends, because she's got her fist ready to go. If you try to stop that, I hear you, right? So as long as you don't take any swings. Because if somebody's trying to, hurt you, somebody's trying to punch you, it doesn't matter what their gender is, you are perfectly within your rights to stop them. So, like, I can understand grabbing her arm so she doesn't hit you, whatever it might be. Now, here comes the controversial part. Because some people are going to say, oh, she started it, so he has every right to annihilate her, right? No.
Annihilate her? She was still standing after the punch. I assume he could have easily knocked her out if he wished to.
Oh, no.
So I disagree with you.
Okay.
And I'm going to get a lot of hate for this, but I don't care. I don't see this as a similar story to Ray Rice, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where Ray Rice used disproportionate force against his then-fiancé. In this case, the woman was obviously very aggressive, okay? I haven't seen any reports of her claiming that he grabbed her ass. You can't see anything like that in the video, so I'm not even going to speculate on something like that. Based on what you see in the video, she's the one who started or initiated the physical contact, and she was very aggressive about it. She intended to punch him in the face first. And would I have preferred for him to walk away or to restrain her in some way and then walk away? Absolutely. There's no question about it. But do I blame him for reacting in that way in that split second? No. I think I would react in a similar way regardless of whether or not it's a woman or a man who's the aggressor. She's the initial aggressor.
No way. Look,
you can't go around punching people in the face, Jake.
I understand.
Whether you're a man or a woman.
I understand. And so I'm not saying it's open season. Women just get to do whatever they want to guys and they get to punch them. If that's the case, they should be arrested. Okay, that's assault. That's obvious. Okay. But the people who say you should not take into account size, I think are living on a different planet. Okay. Whether it's a younger guy, whether it's a woman, whether it's a smaller person, overall, it could be older. It could be somebody's grandfather. If a grandfather comes and punches me in the face, he's a slight guy, I'm not going to annihilate him. I might hold him down and say, whoa, what are you doing? And I'm going to stop the threat against me. I got it. But there are different ways of stopping the threat against you, right?
I get it, yes.
If a 13-year-old punches me, and it's a tiny little 13-year-old, I'm not going to give him an uppercut and knock his jaw off. I'm not going to do that, right? And so you can call me a sucker, and you can say, oh, yeah, you're just going to let women abuse you or whoever abuse you, okay? But I'm hoping, law aside, look, he's going to go into court and he's going to say self-defense, and he might even win on that, and you might be right about that, Anna, and you're right, I shouldn't speculate as to, because it's not out there on whether he touched her or not, that's just my speculation. You're absolutely right about that, okay? But put that aside as a matter of what you should do, right? You shouldn't punch her like that. That's crazy. She's smaller than you are. Forget the, all right, you know, if you're obsessing about man versus woman thing, put that aside. She's clearly smaller than you. You're an athlete. You're a quarterback on a football team. Look, I played football. I played rugby. I'm not going to have a girl hit me and I'm going to fucking clobber her. No way.
I get it, Cenk. I get it. But I think the way that our justice system and the public in general deal with cases like this is beyond unfair, and it sends the wrong message. And the reason why I say that is because regardless of their size, that woman felt like it was totally okay for her to use force against him. She thought it was okay to try to knee him in the groin or to punch him in the face. She didn't even think about it, right? He's not the one who threw the first punch. And the crazy thing is, even though she initiated that violent exchange, she's the one who's not facing any charges, and he's the one who's dealing with a city prosecutor right now, or city attorney.
So that's an open and interesting question. That's something that, wait, we got to figure out what in the world happened there, why she gets the groin, kick him in the groin and punch him, and she doesn't get arrested. That's super fair, right?
No question, based on that video and what we see, she should be charged. And in the very beginning, he's trying to restrain her. He's holding her arm,
I know,
and she's still trying to punch him.
I know, but then he cold cocks her. If you're a bigger guy, you've got to show restraint. Even if you think it's unfair, you got to show restraint. Because God knows what could happen when you do that. You do that to somebody who's smaller than you, you can do serious, serious damage. All right, I'm curious.
I've criticized Anna before, but I think she hit the nail on the head this time. And Cenk is doing an amazing impersonation of White Knight. Making excuses. Claiming he might have grabbed her, when there is no evidence to suggest that. In fact, if you look at the video, he has his back to her, and one hand on the bar, making it extremely improbable he grabbed her. I have to ask, why is it necessary to make excuses for violent women? If it had been a guy at the bar that Johnson bumped into, and the guy turned around and started trouble, do you think Cenk or sael Palani would be making excuses? Of course not. They would just conclude it was a violent drunk arsehole. Well, guess what? Women can be violent drunk arseholes too. And isn't it interesting that she hasn't been charged with assault? But let's continue with the Mancheeze article. Remember, bash a violent bitch, Elam's rant about how awesome it is for bigger, stronger men to hit smaller, weaker women? MRAs are just serial abusers. Many of them have criminal records for beating up women, pedophilia, resisting arrest, sexual assault, and other sex offenses. Oh boy. Firstly, let's deal with the bash a violent bitch claim, as I've dealt with it numerous times before, and no doubt will continue to deal with it numerous times in the future. Paul's article, in which he declared October Bash a Violent Bitch Month, was a response to a Jezebel article, in which the Jezebel writers joked about their violence towards their partners. Paul's point was, how would they feel if I declared October Bash a Violent Bitch Month? Of course we have now seen how they would react, with outrage. Just about every time Paul, or MRAs in general appear in some form of online media, we hear the, declare October Bash a Violent Bitch Month, quote. Of course none of these so-called journalists or online blog idiots, ever criticize, or even refer to, the original Jezebel article. Funny that. I have to wonder how many of them have actually read Paul's article, as opposed to just using the quote without bothering to check context. Once again we are faced with the question, is it journalistic laziness, or just downright purposeful deceit? But that's not even the most interesting part of that paragraph. Let's look at it again. MRAs are just serial abusers. Many of them have criminal records for beating up women, pedophilia, resisting arrest, sexual assault, and other sex offenses. Wow, just wow. No evidence or citations given, of course. And this is a claim I've seen Mancheeze make before in the comments sections of YouTube videos. So I guess I should ask, which is the real hate movement? Next. The local papers in Florida are saying De'Andre was pushing her around near the bar as she was trying to get him off her. Of course MRAs won't mention that he was roughing her up first and she was trying to defend herself. It's another case of the abuser's lobby rationalizing violent males. Just amazing, isn't it? So bumping into each other in a crowded bar is now him pushing her around and roughing her up. Notice the gendered stereotypes used by sael palani? Women always play the role of victim, and any evidence of them being the victimizer is excused away as not really being their fault. They never really had a choice after all, right? While the male, well, obviously it's his fault he got hit, and of course he just should have stood there and took every punch and kick, because, well, I'm sure he did something to deserve it. This is classic victim blaming. Also note that sael at no point links to the video of the incident, just the red pill philosophy video. After all, you cannot have people making up their own minds, right sael? Next. De'Andre has been dismissed from the team and arrested for a misdemeanor battery charge. The woman he had intends to go forward and testify against him, that is if she's not threatened. Her name was released to the public because Florida has laws that allow it. De'Andre's football friends are defending his violence on social media as are MRAs. They've even started a petition to get him back. It has 14 signatures at the time of this post. I say we strip women of their rights and give them to toddlers. Prince Revolver. He should have delivered a powerful haymaker to that bitch's head. Now that would have sobered her up real quick. Nathan Explosion. They want equal rights, we give them equal lefts. Optic Ninja. This bitch most definitely should have served the cock lol. All hyperized feminists should serve the cock. A real woman serves her man, more than just a cock. This bitch is a cunt though. Ex-God oh. Yes, without a doubt all those comments came from MRAs, including the one from Nathan Explosion, who spends his spare time, when he's not fighting for men's rights, as an animated cartoon character on Adult Swim. So no doubt all those comments were 100% legit. No trolls there, or just random people on the internet, no sirree Bob. But we will have a look at the Mancheeze comments section a little later. Next. Finally, the MRA who posted the video where he's obviously encouraging male violence has had his videos flagged before for doing just that. The flagged video had, as he says, over 1 million hits. You know as well as I do that every MRA saw it and rated it up and even commented on it. I don't know how other women feel about flagging his video for encouraging male violence, but for now I'd like it to stay up. The reason I want it to stay up is that I'm working on something in the background whereby this video is used in correspondence with university campuses regarding this incarnation of the men's rights movement and their desire to have their organizations on campus. Well, isn't that great? Batshit crazy radfem sael palani is using non-MRA videos to try to stop men's rights groups from forming on campus. Maybe we should put together some of sael's old videos and see if we can get some feminist groups banned. Nah, it would probably just give them ideas. Next. MRAs are trying to establish themselves on university campuses, and this video is a perfect description of why that shouldn't be allowed. It's evidence of what they'll bring to a university if ever allowed to flourish. You know, I have nothing against Red Pill Philosophy's channel, in fact I'm sub to him, and occasionally watch a vid or two of his. But he really doesn't strike me as the type of person that is in any way interested in setting up a men's rights group on campus, nor is he a men's rights activist, or in any way represent the movement. But don't let the facts get in the way, sael, after all, you never have before. Next. I think it was maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, I came across an MRA YouTuber by the name of To Felfop. I watched a couple of his videos and subbed. It's only a new and small channel, but I think it might have potential. Link below. So anyway, To Felfop put up a video about the recent Owen Aurini debacle, and laughing, which made a response that has to be heard to be believed. Here's a segment of that video.
You social justice guys that are out there going, oh, look at all these gamer gators, and they're not bitching about this, and they're not calling out Aurini on his bullshit. You see that? You see that? They're not calling out Aurini on his bullshit. Okay, you dumb fuck authoritarian twats. I know this is going to be a hard concept to wrap your head around, but we have this little thing called innocent until proven guilty.
Unless you are a woman. Now, Anita Sarkeesian, Zoe Quinn, and Brianna Wu are just 3 of the women who have been terrorized by Gamergate. They are guilty without a shred of evidence, and they have been put through hell by Gamergate for God knows how long now. And for you to come here now, when you know you have a con artist in your midst, and argue innocent until proven guilty, is the height of just outrageous obnoxiousness. Now, I'm not going to go over all the details of the Gamergate bullshit. I'm not a gamer. I'm not a fan of Anita Sarkeesian. She wouldn't be who she is today if you guys hadn't threatened her life so many times. She, Brianna Wu, Zoe Quinn have been tried and convicted without a shred of evidence in the court of Gamergate, and they have been sentenced to death by rape.
Sentenced to death by rape? Are you fucking serious? I don't even know what to say to that. Has Gamergate taken over the American government and declared martial law? Must have happened while I was sleeping. Next. The next video is an interesting one. It involves someone approaching Democratic Congresswoman Elizabeth Esty. I'd never heard of Elizabeth Esty before coming across this video, but I have to give her credit for remaining composed during the overly emotional rant being projected at her. I also have to give her credit for acknowledging men as victims of domestic violence. But before we watch the video, let's read what's in the information section. Men rights or fathers' rights groups are a dangerous movement which arose as a backlash against women's demands to be free from domestic violence and unreasonable male domination in their daily lives. They are an extremely vocal minority which claims to represent the interests of fathers, but in reality they are attempting to turn back the clock on women's rights and regain their dominant role in society and the family. These groups, in reality, are batterers' rights groups, but very quickly learned that an educated public had no tolerance for their archaic views of a man's right to dominate his spouse through domestic violence. These groups networked through the internet and adapted by publicly identifying themselves with conservative Republicans and latching onto the coattails of the legitimate men's movement. While watching the video, you should note Elizabeth Esty's diplomatic face, as well as the look on the photographer's face in the background. Anyway, here is the video.
Now, I've always assumed you're a feminist. Am I right about that?
I like to see strong rights for everyone, women and men.
All right, thank you for saying that. I want to hear that. And you know it's going to probably go viral because you've admitted to being a feminist. But here's the thing is, that wonderful Supreme Court ruling yesterday with marriage equality and gay people having the right to get married, doesn't that do the same thing for single moms with the marriage to end poverty? Isn't it the same kind of family values that certain families are okay, certain families aren't? And the fact that these fatherhood initiatives were designed to force women who are living in poverty to vilify single moms, now with the Supreme Court ruling we had saying that the government doesn't have the right to be in people's marriages and things like that, should we be spending millions and millions of dollars of federal money forcing women to stay married to abusive people or stay with abusive fathers, because it's the same kind of basic civil rights that's being violated. The only difference is it's the most vulnerable people in our society who are being forced by these laws and having the government interfere with their marriage decisions.
Well, I think the issue you raised about domestic violence and providing safety for women or men, for anybody who's in an abusive relationship and for their children. and we should have policies that support safety in that case, and that sort of preservation of life and health is more important than anything else. And that needs to come first. So we shouldn't have policies that require people to stay in households, which is dangerous.
I agree with that, but if you notice all the MRAs and the father rights people who have been recognized now part of the hate group,
It's a pleasure to welcome back to the program Mark Potok, Senior Fellow at the Southern Poverty Law Center and Editor-in-Chief of their Intelligence Report. Mark, we've been talking a lot lately about men's rights activism and sort of concurrently, although they do distinguish themselves, the anti-feminist movement in the United States and Canada. And back in the spring of 2012, the intelligence report from the SPLC put out sort of a statement about some groups within the men's rights activism sphere that you guys are watching, but correct me if I'm wrong, you did not designate them as hate groups.
That's true. There was a lot of confusion at the time. Simply, we wrote an article that was very critical of many of the websites and the people behind them in the so-called manosphere, these men's rights organization, but we did not list any of them as hate groups, and we haven't to this day.
But if you notice all the MRAs and the father rights people who have been recognized now part of the hate group, just like the people, the same family value people who were considered as a hate group against gay people, have been recognized that these guys have been gaslighting, verbally abusing our elected officials, because what they do is they talk about all the positive things about fathers being in the kid's life. Nobody's arguing about a healthy marriage. Nobody is arguing about good men in children's life. Nobody's arguing how good, people should be paying their child support and doing the right thing. What the problem is these funding and these money is going to men with long history of domestic violence, and we are putting women in jail for trying to protect their kids from not wanting to be with these because of the federal funding. We've been vilifying single moms for the last 30 years through Wade Horde, Nancy Johnson, Tom Foley, and they have been misappropriating millions of dollars that's supposed to be designed to pull people out of poverty, build jobs, everything else, to force a conservative agenda, which has led to thousands of women and children being murdered. And I just wish people would start asking questions about the other side of it. Here's something that people don't realize. Do you know what the #1 cause of head trauma is for children? Domestic violence.
Unfortunately for her argument, statistics show that mothers are far more likely to kill their children than fathers. But of course she's working from the viewpoint that only men are violent, and only women and children are victims, thus ignoring female perpetrators once again. Next.
Who do you think has more PTSD in this state? Veterans or children? All right, so why are we forcing children to stay in relationship with men who tried to kill them?
Well, we certainly shouldn't be.
But we are. You met him. You know I tried getting a restraining order against his father, and New Opportunity and Catholic Charity called me a child abuser because I was trying to keep him safe. 3 weeks later, he throws my son against the wall with these programs and nearly kills him. Now, if I didn't terminate his rights, he's getting out of jail in 6 months. He can go easily to the Fatherhood Initiative, get financial training, get career training, and legal help to get back into life with the child he tried to kill. But at the same time, being that we are the victims of domestic violence, there is nothing.
But that's wrong.
But
there should be support, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done on domestic violence. As I've been championing that. So these shouldn't be used. Obviously, it's not a good use of initiatives that are trying to integrate, as you say, fathers who are appropriate to get integrated with their children. But in the case of domestic violence, that's not an appropriate use, and it shouldn't be used that way.
Right, but you understand why it's happening. Remember Tom Foley? You know he's a thief. I mean, Senator McCain called him a thief. Senator McCain called him a thief in Vanity Fair. Talked about how he robbed all this money from Iraq when he was in Iraq. Because he raised so much money for the GOP, and basically made friends with another thief who went to jail, Roland. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Roland is a thief. He's about to go to jail again because he's a thief. Put him underneath, in charge of the family value kind of stuff here. He put him in custody issues and everything. Because of that, because of what Roland Foley did, they moved $100 million of Connecticut federal money that's designed to bring people out of poverty, bring people and jobs.
Have you spoken with your state reps?
I talked to Victor. I talked to Senator Hartley. Let me do my impression of Senator Hartley. He's a personal friend of mine. I don't care if he's accused of elder abuse in the country. And that's what Tom has brought in.
Well, you know, again,
it's federal. It's federal money. It's a loophole that was set up because of Nancy Johnson. You have Nancy Johnson's seat. I'm just asking you to undo the loophole that's killing women.
Well, if we can look at the specific provisions to deal with how the state is dealing with the federal funds that are currently in the state, is going to require dealing with the folks in the state delegation.
Well, we don't have to do it with the state. We can do it on a national level because it's not just Connecticut people are dying. We got people dying all over the country because of these programs. And what I'm asking is, hold on to Elizabeth Warren kind of spirit and say, you know what? Sometimes the Democrats make a mistake, and we need to close up the loophole that kills women and children.
I will look at those provisions, and if we can do that, I have other people waiting who I also need to meet with. So if we can follow up to look at those specific provisions, I do think though it is worth, given the slowness of getting legislation through. There are two tracks. One is to change legislation, which can take years to do, and that's just the reality of it. And another important piece is to, and I don't think you should give up.
No, I'm not going to give up.
With the governor, with state reps and state senators and testimony from committees, even if your own state representatives may not be supportive of how our state of Connecticut is choosing to allocate federal funds.
But see, Governor Malloy tried to do the right thing with the state employees who were stealing money from the Sandy Fund. And the thing is, us as Democrats didn't stand behind him because we're afraid to lose power because the unions did it. We need to say racketeering, corruption. It's not just a corporate issue; it is on a state issue too. And that maybe
I will absolutely look at this federal issue about changing the federal rules
and getting.
I will take a look. I'm not going to commit, and I never would say I'm absolutely going to change something. I don't have the power to do that. I can certainly take a good look at it. And again, the allocation of funds that are already there right now, that's something that working with the folks at the state and using your powerful personal story of how this is playing out. And again, I would say this, that I think is important, which you get an opportunity to testify on it, is to make the point. You're not saying that it wasn't well-intentioned programs, and you're not saying that it doesn't help some people, but it's to say it has been misused in some cases.
So let's have a look at the Mancheeze comments section. This is always interesting. There has been a rash of attacks on women, all very white women, by a variety of different kinds of men in the past few days. 2 women have been, randomly, shot in the head, although it is clear that they are being targeted for being female and in every case very conventionally attractive. Wow, clearly this must be some kind of organized undertaking by the patriarchy, as opposed to, violent crime that happens every day. But she continues. That Rihanna video certainly isn't helping anything, either. It is open season on blondes and redheads, it seems. The women were in the company of men, at the time of the murders, also, which blows the whole theory that women are safe in the company of men or with other women. You may remember that was the solution provided by the male leader of the school where Grace Mann was murdered. I saw the whole vid provided online and you can see that he is right on her ass, literally on her ass with his groin as she first arrives at the bar. He pushes another woman out of the way. She turns around in a non-direct confrontational manner, over her right shoulder while he at her left shoulder, and tells him to knock it off or something. So he was, literally on her ass with his groin, and pushed another woman out the way? Let's have another look at the video. Well, you can clearly see he has his back to her, which means if the Mancheeze commenter is correct, Johnson's groin must be in his arse, which must make it difficult for him to sit down. Anyway, her comment continues. Women have a right not to be harassed and assaulted by men. Women have a right to say, knock it off or else. When she balls up her tiny little fist, he grabs her arm and it looks like he's pulling her hair. She knees him and brushes him with a closed left hand to try to get him off her, yet again. Then he viciously attacks her, punching her in the face. I would agree that women have the right not to be assaulted by men. I just go one step further and think that men should have the right not to be assaulted by women. Crazy, I know. And once again we see her actions diminished, and his exaggerated. She only has a tiny little fist, and brushes him with a closed left hand, while he's apparently pulling her hair, and viciously attacks her. Needless to say, at no point does he pull her hair. I think she must be referring to the segment where he is holding her hand, in an attempt not to get hit. Her comment continues. Only 2 women come to help her. The rest of the men there don't even blink because public violence against women is completely ordinary everyday behavior for men. It is normal to see women victimized by men and women are supposed to just put up with it. She continues. The MRAs have been all over the comment sections, or maybe they're just regular dudes. It's hard to tell. I find this comment very telling. She just assumes the comments are from MRAs. This of course comes from the feminist school of thought, that if someone says something you don't like, just assume they are a men's rights activist, no proof needed. But she then corrects herself and says they might be just regular dudes. Because we all know a woman would never defend Johnson. Right?
Based on what you see in the video, she's the one who started or initiated the physical contact, and she was very aggressive about it. She intended to punch him in the face first. And would I have preferred for him to walk away or to restrain her in some way and then walk away? Absolutely. There's no question about it. But do I blame him for reacting in that way in that split second? No. I think I would react in a similar way regardless of whether or not it's a woman or a man who's the aggressor.
Clearly Anna has had her mind warped by the patriarchy, and she has become a men's rights activist, or possibly even a man, because she's not making excuses for violent women, at least this time. The Mancheeze commenter finishes with, but, as I was saying, there has been a rash of targeted attacks on women by men, mostly not covered by the national media. You have to look at local news sources in a variety of cities to find the stories. Clearly this is an anti-woman conspiracy. What other possible explanation could there be? Personally, I think it's the aliens urinating in our drinking water, in an attempt to turn us all gay, but no one takes me seriously. It must be the tinfoil fedora. So to sum up, could everyone, and that means both males and females, just keep your hands to yourself? No hitting, punching, kicking or whatever. Do you think maybe we could all agree that violence isn't a solution? But if you choose to threaten, kick or hit someone, you really shouldn't be surprised if you get threatened, kicked or hit back. That's simple. Oh, and do you think maybe we could stop excusing shitty behavior based on someone's genitals? That would be good too. Anyway, that's all for this episode, folks, so until next time, always remember, don't drink the poison Kool-Aid.
Right? You just think that this was all put in place by this gynocracy, this government gynocracy that you don't even want to engage in to actually deal with issues that men really have, right? You don't want to do that. So, I mean, and that's the problem that Earl Silverman had. He didn't want to engage with the government. He just, you know, he had this understanding that you guys have, that it's some sort of feminist gynocracy, and he didn't want to deal with it. And that's why he couldn't open a shelter. And they gave him every resource they could to try to help him. But he had to do some of the work too, and he didn't want to. Right? And then, of course, you all used him as your sacred cow. Anyway, this is done now. Good night.